Americans, in particular black Americans, were very surprised that Africa isn't really what they really thought it was. And there's two sides in this. There's the white Americans. White Americans were also angry, but there's positively angry and there's the negatively angry. In the white American side, you realize that for some reason, they are angry that Africa, after seeing it in general, how it looks, they are angry that the perception they had of it isn't really what it is. And the Negroes, the black Americans, they are also angry, but they are angry that they were lied to. Welcome to another episode of the Raya Active podcast. This is me, Polo Kimani, and today we are going to be discussing a couple of things. In the past few days, in the past few weeks, in the past few months, that is December and January, there has been happenings that have been going on in Kenya and Africa in general. One of them being the recent visitor we had as a continent, as Kenya, this young man called Speed, probably the biggest content creator right now globally, or probably one of the biggest, has one of the biggest audiences globally. And there's a few factors that we really need to look at in this visit that we really had. And one of the things I realized is in this tour that was being done by this young man called Speed, one of the things that I realized is that Americans, in particular black Americans, were very surprised that Africa isn't really what they really thought it was. And there's two sides in this. There's the white Americans. White Americans were also angry, but there's positively angry and there's the negatively angry. In the white American side, you realize that for some reason, they are angry that Africa, after seeing it in general, how it looks, they are angry that the perception they had of it isn't really what it is. And the Negroes, the black Americans, they are also angry, but they are angry that they were lied to, and this isn't really something, because you realize most of them have been really trying to avoid the conversation of being involved with this continent called Africa. And they realize this isn't something we should be ashamed of. If anything, this is actually a very cool place. Now, for the white Americans, they are angry that their perception of Africa as an undeveloped country, and they are better than Africa and all that Africans can think, it was destroyed. All right, which brings me to this conversation, because I've been an ardent watcher of documentaries for the longest time, I think. And you know, I love seeing what cities are doing, what Japan is doing, what is Morocco doing, what is China doing, what is America doing, what is Italy doing, right? But particularly when it comes to Africa, there's something I have noted, especially on documentaries that are done by the Americans and Europeans in general. There is the obsession of trying to portray Africa. And when I say Africa, I know Africa as a continent, but you realize as people in Africa, we have so much in common. We have so much similarities and indifferences. If you speak to me as a person from Kenya, and you speak to a person from Zambia, there's literally almost zero difference in how we conduct ourselves. The languages may be different, but we're all Bantus, and we copy things from each other in as much as we don't want to admit each other, in as much as we don't want to admit that, right? So in this particular case, when I'm looking at these documentaries, I realize that there's a perception that is being sold of Africa as just this place where you have wild animals, you have elephants, you have mountains that have white people names, you have lakes that have white people names, you have waterfalls. There's that. It's either that, or if they are not doing that, the documentary is also trying to portray how climate change, how Africans are starving. Turkana, people can't afford food, the roads are bad, children are starving, they can't go to school, all they do is banditry and all that. If they're not doing that, they're in the ghettos. Migingo Island, which is in Uganda and in Lake Victoria, there's that Migingo Treaty. It's a ghetto there. They're either there or they're in Kibera, showing how poverty-stricken Kenya is. So my question again, what is this obsession of trying to portray Africa as this continent that is disconnected to the rest of the world, that should only be approached with very much caution to anybody out there who wants to look at Africa from a perspective of being in the same level as them, right? Because I don't really understand the perception they are trying to sell and why they would be doing that, right? As this retrogressive continent where people, that's why most of these people, when they saw what speed revealed to them, that these people actually have roads, these people have infrastructure, they have buildings, they have cars, they have phones, they don't stay on top of trees. Most of them were surprised. And really, it really shocked me how these people, it's not really much of ignorance, because it's the only things they come across to. They can't really all travel to Africa and see that they are being lied to. But the perception their mainstream medias are selling to them about Africa is quite questionable. And I keep wondering, could this be one of those tactics they use? There's that book called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Could this be one of those tactics where they try to portray this continent as just a place where you should go as a tourist? The only thing you can do there is view mountains and view lakes and hike mountains and go as a philanthropist, help starving children and all that. And rather than a continent where there's so much opportunities, where there's raw materials for things, where there's labor, where there are people who have studied enough and they talk proper, they integrate properly when it comes to linguistics. What is this angle they are working on of trying to keep this continent to look as undeveloped and as unreliable as possible? It's a question that really needs to be thought about quite a lot. And I'm not trying to say that we are developed or we're in the same league as Europe. The truth is we are not, but we are not as low as we are being portrayed to be. Okay? So I think it's up to us, with the resources that we have and the resources that we can gather, to put ourselves on the map. We shouldn't really in any case we shouldn't really in any case depend on these people to sell, to interpret what we are. But it's up to us to interpret to them what we are, what we stand for. There's a reason when you're going to Narok, I think is one of the biggest contributors in revenue annually in this country. Narok has a lot of revenue, but regardless of how much tax is being collected in this county, the roads are poor, the interior, the development is almost zero. And when you try to understand this what is going on here, you realize it's not that these people do not have the capacity to develop these roads, but by the roads being like this, it stands to attract more revenue than when it's developed. That is why they call poverty porn. That these people, the Wazungus, when they come here as tourists, they want to experience the rough terrains, they want to get stuck in roads, they want to see buffaloes crossing the road, and they are getting all this adrenaline. It gives them the African the African perspective that they were sold to by their mainstream media when they were there, and that is what they came to experience. So I don't know how this is supposed to work and who is benefiting from it when all this is happening. Is the underdevelopment benefiting those in those dockets that are collecting this revenue, or is it benefiting those who are selling the perspective so that the ones who are not, the ones who are watching can get addicted and can get this African vibe that really they want to experience? Because they, to be honest, they don't want to experience anything they're experiencing. They want to come at Africa to make themselves feel better about themselves and how their country is far much developed and there are people starving in Africa. I'm sure you guys have heard that in TVs. Of people told, oh, don't throw away food, children are starving in Africa. I'm not saying we are not starving, but we are not really that bad, to be honest. And for us to put ourselves on the map, the only thing we can do is put in effort, and it's up to us. But for this to happen, we need to go leadership. It all starts and ends there. Go leadership. Let me just say this. Go leadership is many things, but it is not whatever it is we have in the opposition right now, whatever it is Rigathi Gachagua is trying, it has been doing. All right? Because I really need people to understand what has been happening. When this protest, when the recent protest we had, June 2024 to July, when this protest started, it was very intentional. There are issues that were addressed that were aren't, but still should be addressed. All right? And Ruto, President Ruto, William Ruto as the president, it was his mandate to come out and approach this issue and address it. But regardless of how, I think he noticed in every way he would approach it, it all pointed back to him. He would be vindicated in both ways, whether in every way he tried to approach it. So the only, I've read some few books here and there, and I've realized that all these people, the dictators, the narcissists, they're all the same. So to escape the responsibilities of dealing with this problem, he has to create a problem of his own that he can approach in a way that he finds more, the politics that he understands. The politics of Gen Z was totally out of his game. He wouldn't really find a way to deal with it. So I think what happened, 2 months, or not entirely 2 months, I think it was 20 days. At first, you guys remember, it was much of ignoring what is going on. And at some point, because he didn't really want to address the issues that were being talked about of why people are protesting, he came out and said, these guys are terrorists. Well, all this is happening. Rigathi Gachagua, who was in government, who was the deputy president, was silent. All right? Remember that. So when Ruto came out and called the people terrorists and saying your protest is based on nothing, it's very baseless, he realized that label wasn't going to stick around for long, right? So what does he do? He tries to change the narrative and create and try to make this whatever these people are crying about, that they have they're not doing it out of willingness or because of concern, but because they are being sponsored by an enemy. So the only problem was there wasn't an enemy, right? The Gen Zs were very clear. We don't want Ruto, we don't want you, we don't want Raila, right? So he wouldn't in any way say Raila is the one who has sent these people. Raila was totally out of the picture because we even said it in the start. We don't have nothing to do with Raila, all right? So Ruto, to try to change the narrative, Ruto was, Rigathi Gachagua was put in the picture, right? And that's why you even started, it was very peculiar to me at first, when I realized people like Oscar Sudi were recording videos of saying, Mwamunyoro umetuma watu wasumbue amani ya Kenya, and all that nonsense. It was slowly, by doing this, You are stripping away the legitimacy in the Gen Z protest and giving power to your enemy who you know very well how to deal with, right? And slowly by doing that, I think it was very, they might have known what they were doing, or they may not have known what they were doing. But in the end, for some reason right now, Rigathi Gachagua is the one who now is being seen as the opposition. There's no opposition there, let's start to be honest. And you guys know, Rigathi, even if he would have been impeached, for whatever reason, if Ruto just left him alone there, his flame would have died a very natural death. Nobody would be remembering him right now. He was that irrelevant in the political scene. Remember, even during that time, he had lost legitimacy in the Mount Kenya region. People were saying, we don't have nothing to do with you. But for some reason, when Rigathi Gachagua was even down, Ruto was still attacking him. All right? So the bottom line is, for whatever reason, Ruto is very intentional with having Rigathi Gachagua as his opposition. He's creating his opposition, right? In the same time, creating chaos in the ODM. This is not me trying to talk about parties, because we all know it's all nonsense. And at the end of the day, my needs and your needs are not addressed. All I'm saying is we need to be very careful with the people we are giving the pedestal to, all right? Because believe me, this is my closing statement. The book of Jeremiah, when Jeremiah wrote and said, "Cursed is the man who puts his faith in man," he was very intentional about it. Think about that. This has been Polo Kimani, Raya Active Podcast. See you next time.